Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. If you can hear my voice right now, that means one thing and one thing only. That means that you are tuned into the freshest podcast on the internet. That means you are tuned into the podcast dedicated to redefining the defined, changing the narrative around the student athlete, what a student athlete can be, and what a student athlete is. As always, my name is Jamal Thompson, also known as JT, and you are tuned into the Qrack the Code podcast. Thank you for joining the Qrack the Code podcast. As always, we want to start off with a recap of the episode last week. We had Mike Dixon on, sophomore football player of the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles. He touched a little bit about his life and the perspective of an athlete, what the student athlete can do in terms of bettering the relationship between coach and player, as well as what the coaches can do to better the relationship between player and coach as well. Talked about how important trust is. We talked about how important finding yourself and finding your voice is. And he also spoke about how important code is. Speaking of code, make sure you follow Code on Twitter at Code at Tennessee Tech, as well as on Instagram at Code Tennessee Tech. That is C.O.D.E.T.N Tech. It is important to follow to stay up to date on all the new and important information. Let's dive right into what happened this week in code. So we had an episode last week touching about the class that we're going to have. This week, Chief Evans and his staff came to speak to the class and touch a little bit about on the different struggles and the different narratives that the police officers have to deal with on a daily basis. They talked about how important it is to not believe the narrative on either side, as well as important to keep yourself safe in the line of duty. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, we had hands-on training on what a correct police stop is supposed to look like. A couple of their officers came out and they ran us through the entire situation from when you stop a car to when we safely make it home and safely get the suspect into custody or into the car. So it was a very impactful moment for all the students as well as all the officers. They got to hear our side of how we feel and how anxious getting stopped by the police can make us, but we also got to see how dangerous it is for officers to approach a vehicle when they have no idea who's inside. So it was a very constructive and important and impactful moment that we had yesterday. Big shout out to Dr. Julie Baker for continuing to provide guidance with this class, as well as provide structure and allowing the opportunity for some young students to have direct communication with law enforcement, which is something that we have not seen in the Cookeville community. And I believe that's all I have for you guys. So stay tuned on Qrack the Code podcast. We have a very, very special episode in store. We're going to hear from Miss Jordan Toney of the track team. We're also going to hear from Miss Raya George of the volleyball team. Stay tuned. This is Qrack the Code podcast.
Hey, my name is Brad Clark, and I'm a sociology major with a minor in criminal justice, and you are tuned in to Qrack the Code.
All right, welcome back to the Qrack the Code podcast. I'm excited to introduce our first guest. She is a senior ag major. Please help me welcome Jordan Toney. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. So let's jump right into it. So as mentioned on the last podcast, there are a lot of big plans in store for the Code, as well as the Women of Code. And we know that you are leading that initiative and leading that movement. So touch a little bit about the future plans that the Women of Code have in store coming forward this semester.
So our first big event is going to be this coming Wednesday on February the 10th. We are going to have a vision board event to kind of unite all of Tennessee Tech's female student athletes. What we're going to focus on is just kind of having a fun, chill time, socially distanced as well, but just being able to see each other outside of practice, or some of us has never met like other sports. So it's just going to be a good event. And then we're also going to have little postcards where we just show our appreciation to female faculty and staff on campus that have made an impact in our lives. Like the health services has impacted all of athletics. They've been our saving grace this whole time. The cafeteria ladies and countless others, we're just going to show our appreciation. And then what we're leading up to is a huge podcast with myself and my other co-founder, you could say, Raya George. We're going to have a huge podcast with some of our friends and family that are D1 athletes or just collegiate athletes in general from around the country, and just have an open conversation over Zoom athletes.
That's amazing. So let's take a deeper dive into who you are, Jordan. So we know that you're growing into an amazing leader right in front of our eyes, right? And if we look at the country as a landscape as a whole right now, we've seen a formidable leader rise to prominence right now in Miss Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, right? So she's breaking grounds not only as being the first woman vice president, but also a woman of color. So can you touch a little bit about how that makes you feel and how her leadership has impacted you and maybe many other young women that look like you and look like her?
For me personally, she's in a field where there's not that many people that look like her, and I can definitely relate to that. My goal is to be a veterinarian, and in the field of veterinary medicine, there aren't that many people that look like me or aren't, look all the same. So it's definitely inspiring because it's not the same area, but I know that if somebody else can do it, then I can do it as well.
Absolutely. So you touched a little bit about going into the veterinary field, right? So, and you even mentioned it a little bit. What was your foundational motivation for trying to go into that field? Because like you said, there's not really many women of color in that field. So touch a little bit about where your motivation comes for wanting to do that.
So I actually didn't really realize, I guess, how the lack of diversity in the field until I started applying to vet school this fall and realized that I kind of had a different standard than everybody else. If I looked like everybody else, my expectations would be completely different. But because I don't look like them, I am forced to basically stand out. So for me, my motivation has constantly been I want to provide people that look like me with the same care for their animals as you would get at any other vet clinic, but with a sense of comfort that I can relate to you a little bit more. I look like you. We come from similar, maybe not the same background, but it's a relatability that wouldn't be there otherwise.
When did you first realize that you had a passion for working with animals?
I've always loved animals, as like cliche as it sounds for a vet student, but for me, it was like, I think I was like 8 years old. My first dog, his name was Zeus. He had hip dysplasia, which is where like basically your joints get real bad and it's hard to like stand and walk. So what I did was I put 2 skateboards together with like 2 bungee cords I found, and I would basically pick him up, put him on the skateboards, and roll him outside so we could go to the bathroom. And after that, I was kind of like, you know what, this is kind of fun. I could see myself doing this a lot longer. And then I was able to just kind of help my mom take the dogs to the vet, see what they did, and it just seemed fun to me.
So it sounds like this has been your dream for a long time, right?
Yes.
And as a senior getting ready to graduate, you are very, very, very close at reaching your dream and achieving your dream and then getting to go into your dream field, right? So personally for you, what would it mean to be a woman of color in the veterinary field?
So for me, it'll be a dream come true. I had a minor setback, I would say, this year. I actually wasn't accepted into vet school. And partially it's because I'm graduating in 3 years. I'm a student athlete. We don't have that much time. So I'm taking a gap year where I'll just get all my experience and then I can refocus, kind of decompress from these 3 wonderful but very hectic years of my life, and then be able to go full force into my future passion.
Yeah, that's pretty big time. So looking even broader than that, we've touched on a little bit about the leader that you've become and the leader that you've always been. We know that you're one of the captains of the track team as well.
Yes.
And you are really a founding member and an important integral part of Code as well. So can you touch a little bit about the strength and the courage that Code has given you this past semester, and as well as just the development of a newfound family on this campus?
I think Code was something that I think I found about it in like late August, maybe, when we had kind of talks over the summer with different professors and stuff. So I heard about it with Coach King and I was like, you know what, this seems kind of fun. The talks that we were having weren't really working for me. They were doing something, but it wasn't like, we were just talking. We weren't having any action. And Code has really been a place where we can talk, but we're also people of our word and we're about action. It's also a great community. Like, I've met so many other student athletes. There's not that many people that are in my major that are student athletes. So really the only athletes I saw were my teammates and just a couple other people at random, but it's a good group of kids or young adults. It's a good group of young adults, and I feel like we're making, even though we just started, we're making a huge impact in our community already.
Absolutely. So, following up on that question, what is something that you would like to see Code accomplish in this second semester?
I really want to see Code just take all the motivation and the that we had in the first semester with going out to the elementary schools, having the march, and being very proactive on campus, and just continue that to set us up for eventually a non-COVID era where it's easier to kind of coordinate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see us keep that going and it just not die out so soon.
Yeah.
But this would be like a longevity kind of thing.
Right. And we talk about longevity and we talk about, you know, things not dying out. Mm-hmm. If we look back to the murdering of George Floyd this past summer and, you know, the many injustices that followed after that as well, you know, we see a topic that bubbles up and then, you know, everybody's speaking about it and then eventually it dies out, right? So what can Code do to ensure that, you know, what the founding piece of this, which was to promote diversity, does not die out? What is something that you think we can continue to do in order to make sure that we see the mission through and continue to promote diversity as well as equality for all on Tennessee Tech's campus?
I think the biggest thing we can do is keep talking about it.
Yeah.
Keep it relevant. With social media, you have highs and lows, and when it's trending, and when it's not, it's not. So if we can stay off of social media and actually make it something prominent in the real world and keep talking about it, keep talking about the issues, be open, be honest, I feel like that'll do some good. And it's not, we're going to have this conversation when it's trending, when we have time. It's going to be, we're having this conversation every day until we see change or we see it to where everybody's equal.
Absolutely. So we're wrapping up, Jordan. You said a lot of important things. You said a lot of great things as well. Let's end it on a high note. Let's end it on a positive note.
Mm-hmm.
You're a senior. I'm a senior. We're both about to graduate. We're both about to move on to different parts of the world, right? So if you could look back at Jordan Toney as a freshman when she came in, what would you say to her?
I think the biggest thing I'm learning now is, I've told this to plenty of my teammates, is to make sure you take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Not in like just the physical way, but make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure you're taking care of your mental health. Make sure you reach out when you need help. Say if you're struggling when you're struggling. I come from a background where you kind of suffer in silence.
Yeah.
So ask for help if you need it. If you aren't mentally okay, let somebody know. Don't be afraid to take some time for yourself. And at the end of the day, as bad as this may sound, grades don't make or break you.
Yeah.
Like, I've definitely been where I'm gonna stay up all night and be so sleep deprived that I can't function in the morning, but I'm gonna get an A on that test.
Yeah.
Like, that's not healthy.
Right. All right. And I think that's a place where we've all been, especially as student athletes who care a lot about our academics as well. So I think that's very important that you mentioned that. Last question for you. Stuck on a stranded island, deserted island. You can only have 3 things. What are you bringing with you?
3 things. Do I have internet service?
On a deserted island, internet service? Sure, we got internet service.
Okay,
sure.
Perfect. Honestly, one of my friends got a Nintendo Switch. I think I would take that because you could take that anywhere.
Right.
Sunscreen.
Okay.
And I would have to bring my dog.
That's a solid 3. And there you have it. Sunscreen, a Nintendo Switch, and her dog. This has been Jordan Toney. We'll be right back on Qrack the Code.
My name is Bryson Garrett. I'm a business information technology major, and you are tuning in to Qrack the Code podcast.
And we are back on Qrack the Code podcast. We have a very special second guest of the show. She is a sophomore physical therapy major. Everybody, please help me welcome Raya George. Raya, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So let's jump right into it. So we spoke with Toney a little bit earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
She told us about the very big plans that the Women of Code have going forward for the second semester of Code. So we know that you are also taking a leadership role with this as well. So please touch on a little bit about the future plans that the Women of Code have in store for the second semester.
So Jordan already mentioned that we're going to have our vision board event on the 10th, but the next couple of things that we're having is we're going to be doing the little poster cards for our appreciation for the women of like on campus and faculty on campus. And that's really special and just like something that's sweet that we can always just give back and let others know that we're thinking of them. Another exciting thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to do a Zoom with some of my friends from back at home who like go through the same things that I've been going through, and some of Jordan's friends that she's had that are going through the same things that she's going through. So that's going to be an exciting time to just have an open dialogue with all of them and just like get to hear their sides of the story and just like get more in depth, because sometimes we don't always talk about it, and sometimes it's easier to tell someone else your story than people you're really close to. So I'm excited to see that and just like get my friends to branch out a little bit. So that'll be exciting.
So you touched a little bit about the topics that many people don't like to talk about, the topics that many people tend to shy away from. So let's dive right into it, right? Rhea, you're mixed.
Yeah.
You have the struggle that I don't have to deal with personally, and that's how to relate to two sides of you. You are 100% human. So touch a little bit about how it feels to, you know, have to deal with, well, am I white enough? Am I black enough? Do you feel invisible at times? Touch a little bit about how it feels to have that power struggle inside and how you are coping with it and how you're doing with it today.
So actually I just had a conversation with my cousin. We are both mixed. We're the only two mixed people in our family. So her situation is the same as mine. Like we both have a white mother and a black father.
Yep.
So growing up, we just never really knew what that really meant. Like I just always knew that my family was white and everyone looked the same, but I knew that I didn't necessarily look like them.
Right.
I never really noticed until I did get older, into that middle school age where I was with more kids who started to look like me, that it was like a thing. Like, oh, I am different. I don't really necessarily look like her. She doesn't look like me. So I definitely did the fitting in where I wanted to look like everyone else around me. I would straighten my hair, would fry my hair off. Like that was just not a good thing. So after I got older, my cousin actually was the one who to like really educate me about like my blackness.
Yeah.
And just like tell me like, no, like we are strong, mixed, but black women. Like we are half and half. Like we are the same. Like we are the same, but we are different. We go through the same things, and I just think that sometimes it's really hard to get that balance, because when I was younger, it would feel awkward to be someone who didn't look like everyone else.
Right.
But be half of them and half of something else.
Right.
Like that was confusing to me sometimes, that I just didn't really understand. In the winter, I get paler. And in the summer, I get way darker.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's funny to like see that and just compare the two. But yeah, I've never really felt invisible per se, but I've definitely felt the difference between all stages of life, like middle school, high school, and now college.
So taking an even deeper dive, right? You're an athlete, you play volleyball. Volleyball is a predominantly white sport, right? So what has your experience been playing a predominantly white sport such as volleyball? And, you know, how has the struggle of, you know, trying to quote unquote find your blackness in a sport that many people don't look like you, how have you dealt with that? How has that experience been for you?
In high school, I was the only black girl on my team. I was the only mixed person on my team. So it was definitely difficult, I think, to really find my potential blackness in a group of just white girls all the time. And I always wanted to strive to look like them and be like them, because if I looked different, that made me uncomfortable, obviously. So now being in college, I have two other black teammates, Dallas and Taylor. It's still kind of difficult because, I mean, we're not the same. We have all different, very different experiences. But it's gotten better to the point where I can own my blackness and they own their blackness, obviously. And we all just kind of bond together on that. But it was really difficult to just realize that I didn't really look the same in high school. Like club volleyball especially, you go to a tournament with thousands of people, and majority of them were white people. And
Right.
so, I mean, that was just like the group and community that I always grew up in. And I didn't know any better until I actually really started to educate myself later in high school. But yeah, it's gotten a lot better being here at Tech, because there are a lot of more finding code and finding the other Black athletes here. It's been a lot of help for me.
And you had a perfect segue into the next question. You talked about code, right?
Yeah.
And Raya, you and I have grown super close within this last semester. The Raya George that I met last semester and in August was struggling. Let's just keep it honest.
Yeah.
Especially following the murdering of George Floyd in the summer, and the injustices that followed, as well as the death of Breonna Taylor as well. So can you touch a little bit about how your experience here at Tech has been once you found your code family, and how that has given you the strength and the courage to be comfortable who you are and who you are in your own skin?
For sure. The summer was rough.
Yeah.
It was a rough summer. After the death of George Floyd, it was a weird time. I was angry all the time. I was sad all the time. I never really knew like what I should be saying, what I shouldn't be saying. Should I speak out? Should I not speak out? And I chose to speak out.
Right.
And it didn't really go as positively as I really wanted it to be. We had tried to have some team discussions, and I didn't really feel like they had gone in that positive direction, because there was just so much hurt and so much anger that Dallas, Taylor, and I had felt in that moment. So I think after the Breonna Taylor conviction, like information that came out, for me, it was kind of like just the final straw. And I was just distraught and needed somewhere to like put my feelings and emotions with another group of people who knew exactly what I was feeling and just how to deal with it. And you and I had that talk in late September, and I was just like, I need to find a group that is understanding of me. So
Right.
It was so helpful and so nice to finally find a group that like you could have a discussion with them and they like nod their head in understanding and be like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like, this is what I'm doing though to deal with it. This is what you can do too. So for me, having that and having those people, this amazing people in this group, has just been so helpful in a time of just raw emotion. So I love it. I love being a part of code. I love being able to find my voice and just like finally find the courage to speak out and know exactly, not all the time, what I'm talking about, but just being able to use my voice and find that courage finally to just speak out. Yeah.
And I'm gonna even brag on you a little bit too, because you've grown into such a strong, impactful leader, and I still think that you're still finding your voice even to this day, because your words have so much meaning and so much power, right? And I know you. I know how much of a social person you are, and I know how much you enjoy being around people. Unfortunately, with the coronavirus, we are, unable to be as socially interactive with one another as normally we would be on a college campus. So can you touch a little bit about how you have been able to cope with staying inside and not being around as many people as you normally would be?
Yeah, like you said, I'm a social butterfly. I
Yeah.
love being around people. I love talking. I love just interacting and being in a group setting. So this whole COVID corona mess, it's just not really been my jam lately. I don't like it, but I mean, it's what we have to do. So lately I've just, been able to be with my team. That's the best part, is just being able to still be around them. The fall semester was it was weird to not really be in the classroom and have all these different like set of rules that we were given to follow with the COVID guidelines. But for me, it's just really like reaching out on, honestly, social media and the internet and using my phone more often. I hate being on my phone, but I've chosen to do it now to stay connected to others. But yeah, I'm really excited to finally get out of the COVID social distancing rules, because I really want to get around more people.
Right. And we've touched a little bit about code a few times in this conversation, right? We're growing rapidly in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to all the student athletes who are not a part of code? Because it's not just a Black organization. We are welcoming of all student athletes and even non-student athletes as well. We have a few non-student athletes in code. So what is your message to the members or to the people who are not a part of code right now?
My message to them would just be like, just join, honestly, because it's a good time, and all of us, it's like a group of people who will understand you no matter what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're here to listen, and we're just here to help you. We're not here to necessarily tell you what to do. We're here to help you, like, guide you through any type of struggle that you're going through, honestly. I've had multiple different types of struggles, not even just with the racial injustices that go on, but even just life. Like, I feel like I can talk to anyone, honestly, in code, and they would be like, this is what I've done, so you can try this too. And it is open to non-student athletes. So I feel like even if you aren't necessarily in a sport, you should definitely try to reach out and just branch out too, and ask to join, because I mean, it's a great thing to be a part of. We're making big movements right now. So I'm excited to see what we're going to do next. I might know a couple things, but I'm excited to see everyone's reactions in the next couple of months of what we're planning on doing. So if you're looking for a group to just talk to get more involved with the school, Code is just a great way to start.
So as we wrap up, Raya, you've said a lot of great things. You've given the audience a deeper dive into who Raya George is, and shown a little bit of the growth that I've personally seen this semester and even last semester. So I got to end it off with my signature lighthearted question. If you can look back at Raya George as a freshman when she came in, what would you say to her?
It gets better.
Yeah.
It gets better. You're going to make a lot of new friends, and you'll finally find your voice.
There you go. Finding your voice. That's what Code is about. Redefining the defined. This has been Raya George. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for giving your perspective. We will be right back on Qrack the Code podcast. Also, we would like to give a very special shout out to Trayvon Martin. It's his birthday today on February the 5th. He would have turned 26 years old today. So, Trayvon Martin, we're always thinking of you. You're always in our hearts and prayers. And there you have it. This has been a wonderful episode. I would like to give a special shout out to Miss Jordan Toney of the track team, as well as Miss Raya George of the volleyball team. They shared wonderful insights and wonderful perspectives on what they feel like as minorities in different sports fields, but also how code has impacted their lives personally. I would also like to give a very special shout out to Mr. Gary and Mr. Kyle of the STEM Center for graciously providing us this space to live out our dreams and help us redefine the define and change the narrative of what a student athlete is and what a student athlete can be. In terms of code, we have a lot of big things in store. Jordan and Raya both mentioned the Women of Code movement that is happening right now. We would like to call all women on this campus, all women athletes, to come together and unite and see the beautiful things that Code is doing and the beautiful things that Code has in store. We would also like to give a special shout out to all the sports teams that are competing right now or getting ready to start up in their spring season. Football starts up pretty soon. February 21st, we have a home game against Austin Peay. Please come join out. The basketball team, they are still competing to make the OVC tournament, and I have faith in my boys that we're going to pull it through. As always, we would like to give a special shout out to Chief Evans and his crew for coming to speak to our class on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 1:20 p.m. We'd also like to give a special shout out to Dr. Julie Baker, as well as Miss Levita in athletics, for graciously providing us the guidance that we need, as well as the dreams and the goals and aspirations to make everything happen and make everything possible. We would also like to give a special shout out to my right-hand man, Easy E. He could not be here today, but I know he's here in spirit, and he's kicking and rocking as always. And I believe that's all I have for you guys. This has been another episode of Qrack the Code podcast. My name is Jamal Thompson, also known as JT. Thank you for tuning in.